I was staring at my computer monitor in our open plan office in Chicago when the notification popped up on the internal board. Chloe Miller, our 23-year-old summer intern who had been with Vanguard Advisory Group for exactly 11 weeks, was receiving the quarterly performance bonus. My quarterly performance bonus, $72,000 that should have been mine after I had shattered every single sales and implementation target they had set for me this fiscal year. The main conference room felt suffocating as our division head, Maxwell Thurston, explained to the gathered team how Chloe had shown exceptional promise, innovative thinking, and a fresh perspective that deserved immediate recognition. I watched Chloe sit there at the polished mahogany table, her hands folded, looking genuinely surprised but pleased. She had no idea what was actually happening. None of us did, really, except for Maxwell. I was 48 years old, and I had worked at this major technology consulting firm for 4 years. 4 long years of staying late, taking weekend calls from frantic clients, and turning around impossible enterprise software integrations that nobody else in the department wanted to touch. I had brought in 6 new major enterprise accounts this quarter alone, each worth more than Chloe would make in a year of full-time employment. The performance bonus was supposed to be a mathematical certainty, contractually outlined for any senior consultant who exceeded their annual targets by more than 30%. I had exceeded mine by 68%. Yet, there I sat, forced to clap along while Maxwell painted this elaborate picture of corporate meritocracy and investing in tomorrow's leaders. The worst part was not even the money itself. Although $72,000 would have allowed me to finally pay off the remaining balance of my graduate school loans and take my first genuine vacation in 3 years. The worst part was how carefully orchestrated and theatrical the entire announcement felt, and how prepared Maxwell seemed with his polished explanations about grooming the next generation of consulting talent. After the meeting adjourned, I lingered near the elevator bank, trying to process the sheer absurdity of the situation. Chloe approached me, her notebook clutched to her chest, with genuine concern written across her face. She was not a bad person, just young and incredibly naive about the corporate world. "Julian, I hope you know I had absolutely no idea about any of this," she said quietly, looking up at me. "I feel terrible that you did not get recognized today. You have been so generous with your time, teaching me how to navigate the client databases and explain the technical architectures." I looked at her earnest expression and felt something shift inside me. The anger I felt was not directed at Chloe. She really did not know she was being used. She was just a young woman who had gotten caught up in Maxwell's web of favoritism. "Congratulations, Chloe," I told her, and I actually meant it. "You worked hard this summer, and you should be proud of the work you did." That evening, I did something I rarely do anymore. I called my sister, Beverly Vance, who was a senior corporate attorney specializing in contract law and employment disputes. "They gave away your performance bonus to an 11-week intern?" Beverly's voice crackled through my phone speaker as I paced around my quiet apartment. "Julian, that is completely insane. It is a clear violation of your compensation structure. Can you file an official complaint with Human Resources?" "It is more complicated than that," I replied, staring out at the city skyline. "I think I know exactly why this happened." During my first week training Chloe, she had mentioned growing up in Millbrook Falls, a tiny town with a population of only 8,000 people. It struck me as an unusual place to be from, so remote that I had never heard of it. Then 2 weeks ago, I had overheard Maxwell, on a personal call in his office, talking about visiting his mother in Millbrook Falls for her birthday. Same tiny town, same impossible coincidence. I had started paying closer attention after that. Maxwell and Chloe had a level of familiarity that went far beyond typical professional mentorship. They shared inside jokes about local restaurants, family-owned bakeries, and knew the same handful of local families. When I casually asked Chloe about her hometown connections the next day, she mentioned that her parents had known the Thurston family forever. Maxwell's family had essentially helped her father secure his first commercial property loan decades ago. The quarterly bonus was not about performance metrics, client satisfaction, or innovative thinking. It was about hometown loyalty and family favors wrapped up in corporate jargon. Beverly was silent on the phone for a moment. Under Delaware General Corporation Law Section 141, corporate officers owe a strict fiduciary duty of loyalty and care to the firm, she explained, her lawyer voice taking over. If Maxwell is diverting company funds, especially contractually allocated performance bonuses, to benefit a family friend or hometown connection, that is a clear breach of fiduciary duty and corporate waste. Furthermore, because your employment agreement specifies the bonus structure based on objective metrics, withholding it constitutes a breach of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. We can draft a formal demand letter, Julian. We can make them sweat. No, I said, a slow realization forming in my mind. If we file a lawsuit now, they will just settle, pay the money, and Maxwell will find a way to make my life miserable until I quit. I want him to understand the exact cost of his choices. I want the system he built on favoritism to collapse under its own weight. Let me handle this my way first. If we need to bring out the legal weapons later, I want to have all the leverage. Beverly laughed softly. I forget that behind your quiet demeanor, you are the most calculating strategist I know. Just promise me you will not sign any waivers. I promise, I said. I hung up the phone and sat in the dark, my strategy fully formed. The thing about discovering favoritism is that it changes how you see every single interaction. Every meeting, every decision, every casual conversation in the break room suddenly has layers of subtext you missed before. I spent the next few days watching Maxwell and Chloe together, and the patterns became impossible to ignore. He gave her the easiest client accounts to manage, the ones with friendly contacts and simple requirements. He publicly praised her for analytical suggestions that other senior team members had made weeks earlier in email threads. He shielded her from the demanding customers and complex technical challenges that the rest of us handled routinely. She was being set up to succeed in ways she could not even recognize, built on a foundation of protected tasks and exaggerated achievements. But here is what Maxwell did not anticipate. I am not someone who explodes when I am angry. I do not storm into executive offices or send company-wide emails exposing unfairness. I have learned over my 24 years in this industry that the most devastating responses often look like kindness from the outside. I started with Chloe herself. I have been thinking about your professional development, I told her the following Monday morning, perching on the edge of her workspace with a cup of coffee. You are clearly management material, and I think you could benefit from some advanced training before your internship wraps up. Her face lit up immediately, her eyes wide with excitement. Really? I would love that, Julian. You are honestly the smartest person on this whole team, and I feel like I have so much to learn from you. Over the next week, I began what I called Chloe's Accelerated Learning Program. I taught her our most sophisticated client management techniques, the complex analytical frameworks that had taken me 2 years to master, and the intricate technical specifications that even senior consultants struggled to implement. I showed her how to build comprehensive project timelines that accounted for every possible variable, from server latency to user adoption rates. I explained the nuanced relationship dynamics between different departments within our biggest client organizations, pointing out which stakeholders held the real decision-making power. I walked her through advanced negotiation tactics that required deep industry knowledge and years of relationship building. Chloe absorbed everything eagerly, taking detailed notes in her leather-bound notebook and asking thoughtful questions. She had genuine intelligence and impressive determination. Under normal circumstances, she might have developed into an excellent consultant given proper time, mentorship, and junior-level exposure. But these were not normal circumstances. Maxwell had decided she was ready for major responsibilities immediately, based not on her actual capabilities but on his personal affection for her family. I began recommending Chloe for increasingly complex assignments. When a demanding client from a major logistics firm requested a lead consultant to handle their software integration project, I suggested to Maxwell that Chloe would be perfect for the challenge. When we needed someone to present our quarterly technical analysis to the executive board, I proposed that Chloe had exactly the fresh perspective and innovative approach they needed. Maxwell approved every single recommendation enthusiastically. He was so pleased to see his protégé receiving high-profile opportunities that he never questioned whether she was actually prepared for them. He truly believed that my willingness to train her was a sign of my support for his leadership. Meanwhile, I made another strategic adjustment to my own work habits. For 4 years, I had been the person who stayed late to fix problems that emerged after hours. I had taken calls during weekend family gatherings, answered urgent client emails while sitting in restaurants, and volunteered for every thankless overtime project. I covered for colleagues during their vacations, absorbed extra responsibilities whenever departments were understaffed, and became the default safety net for the entire division. I had become so reliable that my contributions had become completely invisible. Management simply assumed I would always be available, always willing to handle whatever crisis emerged, and always capable of pulling solutions out of thin air when everything else failed. I decided to test that assumption. I started leaving the office at exactly 5:30 every evening. When weekend emergencies arose, I responded on Monday morning with polite apologies about being unreachable. When colleagues asked me to cover additional projects or review their code, I politely explained that my current workload was already quite full and I could not dedicate the necessary time. I was not being defiant, rude, or obviously uncooperative. I was simply establishing the boundaries that healthy employees are supposed to maintain. The boundaries that everyone else in the office had always maintained, while I carried the extra weight of the department on my shoulders. The effects of my new boundaries became apparent within days. Client calls that I usually handled after hours went to voicemail. Technical problems that I normally resolved over the weekend festered until Monday morning, delaying project starts. Project timelines that depended on my weekend availability began slipping. The seamless, invisible operation that everyone had taken for granted started developing obvious and highly visible cracks. Maxwell began looking increasingly stressed as he realized that the department's safety net had suddenly vanished. Though he could not openly complain about an employee working their exact contracted hours. At the same time, Chloe was discovering the massive gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application. The sophisticated techniques I had taught her required institutional memory and relationship capital that she simply had not had the time to develop. The complex projects she had been assigned demanded difficult judgment calls that only came from years of experience she did not possess. Her presentations began showing strain. She could articulate the theoretical frameworks I had taught her, but she struggled to adapt them when clients asked unexpected, detailed questions about data structures. She understood the analytical models conceptually, but she could not troubleshoot when the actual client data did not fit standard patterns. I watched this unfold with careful attention but no intervention. When Chloe approached me looking overwhelmed, her eyes glassy with unshed tears, I offered encouraging words and general support. When she asked for specific help with particular challenges, I reminded her that learning to solve difficult problems independently was an essential skill for senior consultants. "You are incredibly capable, Chloe," I told her, sincerely. "I have complete confidence that you will figure out the best approach if you spend some time with the documentation." Maxwell began looking increasingly concerned as small problems accumulated into larger issues. Projects that should have run smoothly hit unexpected complications. Clients who had been satisfied for years started expressing frustration about delayed responses and incomplete solutions. The division's reputation for seamless service began showing significant wear. He finally approached me during the third week of my boundary experiment, entering my workspace with barely concealed desperation. "Julian, I know you have been maintaining a better work-life balance lately, which is admirable," he said carefully, adjusting his tie. "But we are facing some urgent situations with the logistics account that could really benefit from your direct expertise." I listened thoughtfully to his list of mounting crises. Each one was a problem I would have solved automatically in the past, working whatever hours were necessary to maintain the department's flawless reputation. Those do sound challenging, Maxwell, I agreed, keeping my tone entirely neutral. I am confident the team will find effective solutions. Chloe has been doing such impressive work lately, and since she was awarded the quarterly bonus for innovation, I am sure she has some creative ideas for these integration issues. Maxwell's expression tightened, a muscle in his jaw twitching. Chloe is still developing her skills, he said, his voice dropping. These situations require someone with more experience. I understand your concern, I replied. Unfortunately, my current project load is completely full, and I cannot take on additional client responsibilities without compromising the quality of my existing accounts. Perhaps you could consider bringing in external technical consultants to help with the logistics integration. External consultants would cost the company roughly 3 times my hourly rate for the exact same work. Maxwell knew this as well as I did, and the thought of explaining that expenditure to the regional VP was clearly painful. He left my desk without saying another word. That afternoon, I received a call that changed the trajectory of my career. Mercer, a managing partner from Zenith Consulting Group, had been trying to reach me for months about a senior partner position. I had been politely declining her approaches because I valued stability and believed my hard work would eventually be recognized at Vanguard. This time, I listened carefully to her offer. The package Victoria described was exceptional. The base salary was 60% higher than my current compensation. The bonus structure was transparent, contractually guaranteed, and based on objective performance metrics rather than managerial discretion. The company culture emphasized professional development, strict work-life boundaries, and actual equity participation that could be worth a significant fortune over time. Most importantly, Zenith specialized in exactly the type of complex technical database integrations that I found most intellectually engaging. I am very interested, Victoria, I replied. How quickly could we move forward with this conversation? We could have you in for interviews this week. She replied immediately. I have been hoping to connect with you for so long that I am willing to expedite our entire recruitment process. I scheduled the interviews for Thursday and Friday, using personal days that I had accumulated over the past 4 years but had never taken because I was always too busy covering for the department. The interview process exceeded my expectations completely. Zenith Consulting Group had built exactly the kind of professional environment I had always wished Vanguard could become. By Friday afternoon, they extended a formal offer that included a $20,000 signing bonus, a 60% base salary increase, and full health and retirement benefits that surpassed anything Vanguard offered. I asked for the weekend to consider the contract, knowing in my heart that I had already made my decision. I forwarded the contract to Beverly for a final review, wanting to ensure there were no hidden clauses that could complicate my transition. Beverly called me on Sunday evening, her tone filled with professional satisfaction. The Zenith contract is flawless, Julian. But more importantly, I reviewed your existing Vanguard employment agreement and the non-compete clause you signed 4 years ago. Under the recent Federal Trade Commission non-compete clause rule, specifically Title 16 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 910.2, non-compete clauses for workers are declared an unfair method of competition and are largely void. Because Vanguard failed to provide contractually guaranteed performance bonuses to you, they are also in material breach of the compensation agreement, rendering the entire contract void ab initio. You are completely free to work for Zenith, and you can legally accept business from any client who chooses to follow you of their own free will. Monday morning, I arrived at the office with a formal resignation letter in my briefcase and a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. Maxwell intercepted me before I even reached my desk. Julian, we need to talk in my office immediately, he said urgently. Several major clients have expressed serious concerns about service quality over the weekend. I think we need to reassess some of our recent project assignments and have you step back in to manage the logistics integration. He was finally ready to acknowledge that his golden intern was completely unprepared for the responsibilities he had thrust upon her shoulders. But instead of admitting his mistake directly, he wanted me to quietly fix the problems without any official discussion, additional compensation, or recognition. I looked at him standing there, desperate for me to rescue the situation he had created through his favoritism. Maxwell, I appreciate you bringing these concerns to my attention, I said calmly, sitting down in the chair opposite his desk. I think this conversation is perfectly timed, actually. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the envelope containing my resignation letter. I wanted to let you know that I will be transitioning to a new opportunity. This is my formal resignation letter. My last day will be 2 weeks from today. The color drained from Maxwell's face as he stared at the envelope as if it contained a physical threat. Julian, the timing is incredibly difficult, he stammered, his hands shaking slightly as he picked up the paper. Can we discuss what it would take to retain you? I am sure we can address any concerns you might have about compensation, titles, or advancement opportunities. I can talk to the board about restructuring your role. I handed him the letter with a genuine, relaxed smile. I am grateful for the experience I have gained here, Maxwell. This decision is final. Sometimes new challenges simply align perfectly with your long-term professional goals. He opened the letter, scanning the text with growing panic. You are giving exactly the minimum 2 weeks' notice during our busiest quarter, he said, looking up at me. Is there any flexibility on your start date with the new firm? Unfortunately, no, I replied. They need me to begin immediately on a time-sensitive project that matches my database integration expertise perfectly. This was completely true. Zenith had a major enterprise client implementation beginning in 3 weeks that required exactly my technical skill set. Victoria had been thrilled when I accepted their offer with such a quick turnaround. Maxwell was clearly calculating the sheer impossibility of his situation. Training a replacement for my responsibilities would take months, assuming he could even find someone with comparable experience willing to work at my current salary level. The ongoing logistics crisis needed immediate attention from someone who understood both the technical requirements and the specific client dynamics involved. Most importantly, he was realizing that his decision to give my $72,000 performance bonus to Chloe had created the exact financial and professional circumstances that made my departure inevitable. Julian, I want to be completely transparent with you, he said, lowering his voice and leaning across the desk. I think there may have been a misunderstanding about the quarterly bonus allocation. I would like to revisit that decision with the executive committee and ensure you receive the appropriate $72,000 for your contributions. I looked at him with genuine sympathy. Maxwell, I truly appreciate that gesture, but my decision is not connected to the bonus situation. Chloe absolutely deserved that recognition, and I am happy she received it. Sometimes the best opportunities come from unexpected timing. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched the full scope of my departure's impact unfold like a carefully written drama. The logistics client, frustrated by Chloe's inability to resolve their integration issues, threatened to terminate their relationship with Vanguard entirely unless a senior partner was assigned to their account immediately. The executive board presentation that Chloe had been assigned was postponed twice, because nobody else in the department could compile the complex data analysis in time. Chloe approached me on my third to last day at the firm, looking exhausted with dark circles under her eyes. Julian, I need to ask you something honestly, she said, her voice trembling. Did you know this would happen when you started teaching me those advanced techniques? I considered her question carefully. Chloe had grown significantly over the past month, even as she struggled. The intense pressure had revealed her actual capabilities and limitations in ways that gentle development never could have. I knew you were intelligent enough to handle complex challenges, Chloe, I told her truthfully. I also knew you would need to discover your own approaches to solving difficult problems. She nodded slowly, a look of understanding dawning on her face. I think I understand now why you have been so successful here. It is not just about knowing the theoretical models. It is about having the years of experience to know when and how to apply them. Exactly, I said, and now you are building that experience much faster than you would have otherwise. I am going to ask Maxwell to adjust my responsibilities, she said, showing a level of maturity that surprised me. I think I was promoted much too quickly, and I want to make sure I am actually ready before I take on anything this complex again. I felt a genuine sense of pride watching her take ownership of her professional development. She had transformed from someone who did not know what she did not know into someone who could accurately assess her own technical capabilities. "That sounds like excellent judgment, Chloe," I said, with a nod. Meanwhile, the operational impacts of my resignation were becoming impossible for the company to ignore. 3 other senior consultants in our department had approached Maxwell, requesting immediate salary reviews. My departure had prompted them to evaluate their own compensation and workloads balance. They had started wondering why they had been accepting below-market salaries while handling above-average responsibilities, especially after seeing how easily performance metrics could be bypassed for personal connections. Maxwell found himself facing not just the loss of his most productive team member, but a potential exodus of experienced staff who were suddenly questioning the firm's entire compensation structure. On my final Friday, Maxwell requested a private meeting in his office. "Julian, I want you to know that I recognize the mistakes I made," he said, looking tired and defeated. "The bonus decision was influenced by factors that should not have been relevant. You deserve that recognition, and I let personal considerations cloud my professional judgment." I appreciated his honesty more than he probably realized. "I respect you for acknowledging that, Maxwell," I said. "Those kinds of decisions are difficult, and I understand the pressures of managing relationships." "Is there anything I can do to change your mind about leaving?" he asked, one last desperate attempt. "A counteroffer, additional equity, a commitment to more transparent recognition processes." "I think this transition is beneficial for everyone involved," I said finally. "You will have the opportunity to restructure the team in ways that better support long-term operational success. Chloe will be able to develop her skills at a sustainable pace, and I will be taking on challenges that align perfectly with my career goals." "Can I ask where you are going?" he asked. "Zenith Consulting Group," I replied. Maxwell's expression shifted to something approaching professional regret. "They are our biggest competitor in the enterprise consulting space," he said quietly. "You will be working on exactly the types of projects that you always handled best here." "That is exactly why the opportunity was so appealing," I told him. What Maxwell did not know was that Victoria had been recruiting me specifically because Zenith had been losing potential clients to Vanguard. My reputation in the tech consulting industry was strong enough that several major enterprise customers had chosen Vanguard primarily because they wanted to work with me personally. Now, those relationships would be transitioning to Zenith, along with my departure. Not through any deliberate client poaching, but through the natural movement that happens when clients trust a specific consultant's expertise. The irony was perfect. Maxwell's decision to give my $72,000 performance bonus to a family friend had prompted my departure, which would ultimately cost his department millions of dollars in lost revenue and competitive disadvantage. On my last day, Chloe organized a small farewell gathering in the break room. The entire team attended, including Maxwell, who looked genuinely sad as he presented me with a farewell card. "Julian has been the backbone of this department," Maxwell announced to the group. "His professionalism, technical expertise, and mentorship have contributed to every success we have achieved over the past 4 years." I looked around the room at colleagues who had become friends, at Chloe, who had grown so much in such a short time, and at Maxwell, who was finally understanding the true cost of prioritizing favoritism over competence. "Thank you all for making this such a meaningful experience," I said. "I am excited to see how everyone continues growing." 3 months later, I received a message from Chloe. She had been promoted to a senior consultant position, but with appropriate preparation and support this time. She had also been featured in the company newsletter for developing an innovative client training program. "I wanted to thank you for pushing me to grow faster than I thought possible," she wrote. "I know those weeks were overwhelming, but I learned more about myself than I would have in years of gradual development." Maxwell had reached out as well, asking if I would be willing to provide consulting services for specific database projects where our expertise might complement each other. His department had recovered from my departure, but they had restructured their approach to talent development and compensation to prevent similar situations. As for me, Zenith Consulting Group exceeded every expectation I had. The work was intellectually stimulating, the culture genuinely supported work-life boundaries, and the compensation reflected the value I brought to complex client challenges. Most importantly, I had learned something crucial about my own worth. For years, I had been so focused on proving myself through extra effort and uncomplaining reliability that I had allowed myself to become undervalued. The bonus situation had forced me to recognize that my contributions were significant enough to command respect and appropriate recognition. The revenge was never about destroying anyone or causing permanent damage. It was about stepping away from a situation where my value was not recognized and allowing natural consequences to demonstrate what that value actually was. Maxwell learned that favoritism creates exactly the kind of instability that strong performers will not tolerate. Chloe learned to assess her own readiness before accepting responsibilities beyond her current capabilities. The department learned to structure compensation systems that actually reflected merit rather than personal relationships. I learned that sometimes the most powerful response to unfairness is not fighting against it, but simply refusing to enable it anymore. The $72,000 bonus turned out to be the cheapest lesson Maxwell's department ever received about the cost of losing their most valuable contributors.